What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to America's Finest Sports. It's Wednesday night, which is meaning we are going to be talking some NBA basketball. Before I get into even the start of this stream, I do want to say rest in peace to Vin Scully, the former announcer for the LA Dodgers, been a part of just so many historical moments in baseball and football as well. So rest in peace to him. Thoughts and prayers are out to, his family, his close friends, and things of that sort. He's really a legend in, the broadcasting game. But, in today's, basketball topic, I'm going to be starting off talking about Bill Russell. Then I'm going to get into Rudy Gobert. And then finally, I will be talking about the Big Three era and whether or not it is over and, what the NBA is going to do from here on out if it is over. But, if you're watching this live, this is a pre-recorded broadcast. So that is why I will not be interacting with the chat, but it should still be a lot of fun. But, let's jump right into it. Let's talk about Bill Russell, because Bill Russell, obviously one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Bill Russell was part of the greatest dynasty, the winningest dynasty the sports world has ever seen. I mean, he won 11 championships in 13 years, but, Bill Russell doesn't want to really be known for winning championships. That's not kind of the thing that when people look back at Bill Russell, don't think about the championships that he won. That's not the important thing. All right, and so I'm going to be, talking about kind of, everything that I can gather about Bill Russell. Obviously, I've had very limited, the least amount of communication they can have. I've still had communication, but very limited communication with Bill Russell. Let's kind of get into it, because Bill Russell, obviously 11 championships, 13 seasons, a winner. But he was the first black coach in American professional sports. And that's huge, because when you are the first person to do something and you're trying to become a pioneer, in any facet, having success when you're the pioneer is even more difficult. Because one, you have to figure out how to get the job, and then you have to try and succeed with it. Because if you don't succeed, it's going to be, the ceiling has been broken. It's possible, but it's, if you're successful, it's going to be easier for others to follow. And Bill Russell came in and he, was the player coach for the Boston Celtics, and he won 2 championships. That's unbelievable. To be the first ever black coach in professional sports in the United States of America, and to win consistently, to be the best as well. That shows how, impactful he was able to be. And, that's something that I think he would much rather be remembered by. Because Bill Russell was more than basketball. And, I want to take some time. I interviewed Jim Barnett. Myself and Matt, we interviewed Jim Barnett probably about a year, maybe it was 2 years ago. And he was a teammate of Bill Russell's at one point in his career. And so I want to play a little bit of a clip for that, he talks about Bill Russell in that. So I'm going to play that right here for, a minute or so. We can listen to that. But I apologize for my voice. This was like 2 years ago.
Some of the teammates that you've played it with, and you've played with a lot of great guys. Was there somebody that had either a great locker room leadership presence, or maybe somebody that stood out as being funny, or maybe somebody with an incredible work ethic that you looked up to? Any guys like that kind of stand out to you in your playing career?
Well, I played on so many different teams. You hit all those. I saw leaders, I saw comics, I saw guys that screwed off too much. The greatest leader, without question, was my first year when I joined the Celtics, because that was Bill Russell, and he was a player coach, and he was the first African-American coach in any major sport in the world. I believe, I know in the United States for sure. And he was such a great leader. He won 11 championships in 13 years. He won 2 out of 3. They didn't win the championship my rookie year. Then he won 2 more and then retired. So he was on a team that won 11 championships in 13 years, and he always had great leadership. But he also was very funny and joked around a lot. And but there were John Havlicek on that team was a great leader. obviously, when I played with the
That's all I'm going to play for that. At some point, I'll try and get that uploaded to AFS if anybody's interested. Jim Barnett was the former play-by-play announcer for the Golden State Warriors for a long period of time. But something that kind of stood out was how he talked about how Bill Russell was really funny. And that's something that you don't really hear about when people talk about Bill Russell, because you hear about the change, that he helped instill in the NBA. You hear about the winning, and you hear about the leadership. But so often, he is incredibly funny, right? We see Shaquille O'Neal talking, with all the legends and all these stuff, and Bill Russell just kind of yells out from the crowd because they bring up, oh yeah, well there's also Bill Russell, and you see Kareem standing on stage, Shaq, all the greatest centers, and Bill Russell just looks at all of them, and he's just like, I would kick your ass. Like Bill Russell was funny. I mean, he knew he was great, but he was also funny. The story of Wilt Chamberlain, you can do a 500-part docu-series like The Last Dance on Wilt Chamberlain, because that man did it all. But they talk about Wilt Chamberlain became the highest paid player in the NBA, $100,000. And Bill Russell was like, I'm not about that. Sorry. Give me $1 more. It was like if anybody has seen Gotham and Bruce Wayne keeps raising the bid by $1. He was like, no, pay me $100,000 and $1. And that's what the Boston Celtics did, because they were like, no, we're going to give it to Bill Russell. And that rivalry between Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain was really the first, I would say, notable rivalry. I'm sure there's guys before then. I can honestly say I don't know who George Mikan was battling with personally. I'm not as familiar with that era. But Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, and on, pretty decent with that. But, that rivalry is still the biggest rivalry in basketball. Celtics, Lakers. And when we talk about Bill Russell, that rivalry, those types of things in the early years of professional sports, even though basketball's been around for a very long time, really starting to gain popularity, building up from Bill Russell to Kareem, to Magic, Bird, Jordan. It just kept going up, right? Well, Bill Russell was kind of I'll say the second era of superstars. I'll say George Mikan was the first. But when you look at professional sports, the way that you create this dialogue, the way that you create growth in a sport, it's more than just one person being really good. You have to find a way to make it entertaining, right? Because there's a lot of, great athletes, right? I can list off thousands of great athletes, but you look at guys like Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, people had to watch. Why? Because he was so unbelievable, and he was able to win so consistently. But that's a single individual sport. When it comes to team sports, there's a lot of great players in basketball, but people don't really come to watch them a lot of times. I'll say Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is one of the best basketball players in the world, has been for the last 10 years. But just because you're great doesn't mean that you're going to be drawing crowds. Now, who drew crowds? The really flashy guys, or the guys that were part of those rivalries. What is the best, NBA Finals of the last 10 years? There's two names. It's either, both of them have LeBron James in it. It's either going to be the, Spurs Heat, which is two dynasties going up against each other. Tim Duncan and the Spurs, LeBron James and the Miami Heat Big Three. Or it's going to be the Golden State Warriors versus the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers. Why? Because it's two dynasties. It's two players. The media was able to say it's LeBron James versus Stephen Curry. When you're able to say that, when you're able to say versus and not make it team, because team isn't as box office. If you tell someone on the street that's not a basketball fan, right, and maybe this is the 90s, I don't know, and you say, hey, we've got Bulls Knicks tonight, they may be like, okay, like, what is that? I don't really care. But if you say, hey, we've got Jordan and Ewing, all of a sudden they hear those names, right? And it sounds more important when you're able to pin two people against each other, whether or not it's right, because like, oh no, it's a full team sport and things like that. But in basketball, you're matching up against your opponent. And Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain were able to match up against each other. And they were the two best. There wasn't a doubt about who the two best players in the world were. Maybe you can argue Oscar Robertson was there, kind of towards the tail end, back when Wilt was averaging 100, Oscar Robertson the triple-double. Well, neither of them won MVP. Bill Russell actually won MVP that season. But that kind of rivalry, right? That was the foundation for modern, sports rivalries outside of baseball. In the United States of America. Like, that started with Bill Russell. That started with Wilt Chamberlain. Unfortunately, now both of them have passed away. But, that rivalry right there. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. Because Lakers-Celtics it's still talked about. Even though they've only, matched up against each other in the finals, I want to say twice in the last, twice, I think, since Magic and Bird. That was, Paul Pierce, Rajon Rondo, KG against Kobe and Pau Gasol. But it's still talked about because of, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Magic, Bird, just kept on going. But in 2020, I think it was actually February 23rd of 2020, the Lakers played against the Celtics. And it was at Staples Center. And it was the first time that they had played since Kobe Bryant had passed away. And Bill Russell went to that game. It was the first time he had gone to the Staples Center since he gave out the first ever Bill Russell Finals MVP award to none other than Kobe Bryant. And when he went to that game, Mr. Celtic, the guy that built the rivalry, the greatest rivalry arguably the greatest rivalry in American sports history, and he showed up and he was not wearing a Celtics jersey. He wasn't wearing anything Celtics. He was wearing a Kobe Bryant Los Angeles Lakers jersey. A lot of people wouldn't have done that. Now, they might have worn, an armband, and I'm not saying, it's not okay to wear a Celtics jersey to that game. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying Bill Russell said, this is about more than basketball. Like, what he did throughout his entire career was more than basketball. He was about pushing for change, and he was about people. And he recognized that, hey, I know I'm a Celtics legend. I know I'm honestly the Celtic, right? But this isn't about me right now. This isn't about the Celtics. This isn't about the Lakers. This is trying to honor somebody, that was another pioneer or revolutionary person in the history of this game. And I'm gonna honor him. And honoring other people was something that Bill Russell did, throughout his entire life. 1975, Bill Russell was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Deservingly so. No one will ever make a case to you that he shouldn't be inducted. 1975. He refused to take the ring. He refused to really accept the induction because he said that there were other people that deserved that honor before him. And the biggest one I think he felt was Chuck Cooper. If you don't know, Chuck Cooper was the first black player in the history of basketball to get drafted into the NBA. He ended up going to the Boston Celtics, and he hadn't been inducted. And Bill Russell was like, no, there's other people that deserve to, go in first. Mind you, Bill Russell not only get rid of the NBA championships, he was the first, black coach in, American professional sports. Like that's a big deal. Completely getting rid of him playing basketball, completely getting rid of him playing championships, winning championships, being a winning coach. None of that has to do with it. He was a 12-time All-Star, led the league in rebounding 4 or 5 times. At that point, like, you could look at him in 1975 and say he's the greatest basketball player of all time. And he was like, there's other people that deserve it first. Because Chuck Cooper helped get Bill Russell to where he got to. Because if there is no first, you can't, take that step. And so Bill Russell, the winningest player in basketball history, the first ever black coach in basketball history, did not accept his Hall of Fame ring until 2019. 3 years ago. Because that's when Chuck Cooper got into the Hall of Fame. And Bill Russell, he had a private ceremony. And this is where my interaction with Bill Russell, my conversation, even though it wasn't much of a conversation, I had a one tweet exchange with him. I tweeted at Bill Russell. He replied to me. And I talked about how he waited to go into the Hall of Fame until Chuck Cooper did. And Bill Russell commented and commented showing yeah, we got him in, and it was very clear that was something that he was very passionate about. It wasn't about himself, it wasn't about his legacy. It was about trying to help someone that he felt like wasn't getting the proper acknowledgement, because Chuck Cooper deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and now he is in the Hall of Fame. But if you look at it from a basketball standpoint, Bill Russell could have easily walked in, grabbed that ring, sat down with the other legends of the game, and he could have been done. He's done enough, but he didn't want to just do that for himself. He wanted to help, bring people up, and he wanted to help the people around him and use his kind of leverage to help someone that most people probably don't know the name of. Chuck Cooper is not a well-known name in the basketball community, in the casual basketball fan's mind. It's not. He never averaged 10 points per game. I'm not saying he was bad. I'm just saying he wasn't a high-profile superstar like Bill Russell was. But that's not the important part. And that's what Bill Russell understood. Like I said, Bill Russell was more than basketball. It was about trying to do the things that could get you to help someone else. And that's what he did, trying to get Chuck Cooper into the Hall of Fame. And he ended up, accepting that honor, the way that he went out, wore the Kobe Bryant jersey to a Lakers-Celtics game, a massive rivalry. And at that point, those were two good teams. Those are teams, trying to get into the playoffs, potentially could be, playing against each other in the finals. And Bill Russell was like, no. It's not about that rivalry today. It's about honoring someone that, the basketball community had lost. But, that's kind of all I have on Bill Russell. I just kind of wanted to talk about him for a little bit because he's someone that I have always really, really liked reading about. Whenever there's a story or a video that I see and it's talking about Bill Russell or it's talking about Wilt Chamberlain or it's talking about any of these kind of legends, I love to hear about it because I just think it's so fascinating. And the way that Bill Russell, the way that he just did everything was just so influential and instrumental in basketball, which is a sport that I'm very passionate about. So, always appreciative to Bill Russell. And I just want to, I wanted to take this time to talk about him for a little bit.